Cool. All right, you can hear me, see me good?
Yeah, everything's
Okay, good.
everything's staying fine.
All right. So just count me down and we can get into this episode.
All right, cool. 3, 2.
Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV, we're finally like a month into the season, and I'm still confused. I don't know what's going on. I'm at the point right now where I can't really determine real championship contenders, and the teams that we thought were going to be so much better, um, surely have not lived up to expectation. I think one of the more notable teams is going to be a key topic in
Ooh,
today's podcast.
yeah. There's a team who's currently in like the bottom two of the league that definitely shouldn't be there. I mean, like you know those type of teams, Jay. There's all those teams at the bottom are supposed to be tanking. My Raptors. You got the Pelicans who have a bunch of injuries right now. The Wizards. There's one team that's not like the other in that mix. Let's be completely honest. But yeah, it's gonna be a fantastic episode. We're gonna talk about that specific team very very shortly. Talking about Rookie of the Year 1 month into the season, which is a pretty interesting race because we obviously didn't know what was going to happen going into the season because of this like crazy rookie class. But there's some guys really stepping up now as of late, and we're going to be talking about those guys very shortly. We got the draft, we got the quiz, we also got WNBA topic coming back onto the show, so we're going to be talking about that as well. So it's going to be a pretty good episode. Make sure you sit back, relax, and enjoy. It's going to be another good one. But before we go into this episode, we do have to plug our socials. Remember to follow our individual accounts at TV on Basketball, at the Knockdown J /Routine Jumper. Those links will be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. In terms of the YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe so you will not miss an episode. And in terms of the podcast network, Spotify and Apple, leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Yeah, today should be a good episode, man.
It is going to be a good episode. And the team that, I mean, you guys probably know what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about the Philadelphia 76ers because there's been no single team that has been in the news quite like the Sixers this season, this past week. Like, we haven't dedicated a whole topic around the 76ers. And this week was just absolutely madness for them. Because currently, right now, they are sitting at 3-13. I repeat, the Philadelphia 76ers, the team that we said on the podcast had the best offseason out of every team in the NBA. Maybe bar the Thunder, but still one of the best off seasons acquiring um, Paul George in free agency. They're 3-13. They are below teams such as the Toronto Raptors. They're below teams such as the Utah Jazz. This is how bad the season of the 76ers have been. Below the New Orleans Pelicans, the team that had to bring in Alfred Payton on to their roster, who hasn't played in the NBA in 2 years, and he started. This team is doing better than the 76ers so far this year. So last week, obviously this past week, we had the whole team meeting, which got leaked. Um, Joel Embiid is apparently still trying to find the man who leaked who leaked that news, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, horrible situation for the 76ers. We're gonna definitely go into it more. But Jay, I'm gonna throw it over to you. Your thoughts on what possibly could have been the worst possible start for the 76ers so far this year?
Dude, this team is atrocious. I mean, it's so bad how they just seem to be playing in like quicksand. Like this team does not have a real identity at all, which I do think is partially understandable given that your three stars have not really had any real time to play together so far in the early goings of the season. You pair that with the fact that this is a relatively new roster over the course of adding, yes, some people are consistent. Kyle Lowry, right? Kelly Oubre, those are guys that were on the team. Tyrese, Joel, these guys were on the roster. But we talked about this in the offseason. A lot of the rest of the roster is still new. Andre Drummond has been on this roster before, but things are different now. Gershon Yabusele sneakily might be one of the better pickups out of everybody they got this summer, which was not
Yes.
not our initial assumption. Um, You go down the list. Eric Gordon isn't the same guy he was before. Reggie Get Jackson clearly doesn't look like the same guy he was before. Caleb Martin is definitely not playing up to the expectations I think I had for him when we were having our conversations about him being their starting power forward going into the year. Like, I mean, TV, one of the most notable things, and the stat has been brought up a lot so far in the last week, outside of Jared McCain and Gershon Yabusele, there is not a single 76er shooting above, man, maybe Kyle Lowry at 35%, but like other than that, there's no player that's really shooting at least, a solid percentage. We're talking 35 or above
Yeah.
from three. Reggie Jackson is exactly at 3 attempts per game. But then beyond that, it gets ugly. Paul George, 27.8%. Caleb Martin, 30.4. Embiid, 16.7. Like, and obviously Kelly Oubre 26.1. Not necessarily brand new, but you know,
But the thing is, like, he was shooting well he was shooting like okay last year at the
yeah.
very least. Like, this is like even a low for him.
I
Eric Gordon,
mean,
who was supposed to be a shooter, is not
dude,
a shooter right now.
dude, this is how bad the Philadelphia 76ers are. This is how bad the Philadelphia 76ers are. Jared McCain, who a lot of people presumed based off the offseason that the Sixers had, believed that he was not even going to really see playing time on the main roster this year, has been the biggest storyline of their team through the first,
Positive
really
storyline.
the first
Positive, yeah.
month, really the entire first month of the
Yeah.
NBA season. He is the number one positive storyline of the first month for the Philadelphia 76ers. And this was a guy that coming into the year, we even discussed it based off their offseason. We weren't sure if he was going to get real rotational minutes unless he was maybe going to shave a couple off of Kyle Lowry in the rotation. But other than that, we thought he would just kind of be a spot guy, show that he could shoot the ball at a high clip, but he was going to do most of his damage playing in Delaware or something.
Hmm.
No, no, he's the only player with a pulse on this main roster right now. It seems Tyrese Maxey being back in the lineup definitely helps as well because he plays with high energy. But this backcourt is the only positive thing about this team, and that's hilarious given that the wing depth is one of the more notable parts of what made this team seem like they had such a special offseason.
Yeah. No, like, where do you even start with this team? I guess you have to start at the top. Joel Embiid
Mm.
already kind of. I mean, if we look before the season, right? He already kind of set the vibes when he said, "I'm not going to be playing in back-to-backs this year." That kind of already set the vibe for what the season's going to become. He ends up missing time. He ends up getting suspended by the league, and then when he comes back, like, he's had like one good game this entire season so far in the four that he's played, and even like with that one game, they still lost. They still lost the game where he scored 35 points. He doesn't look fully committed into this. The fact that, according to the report, Tyrese Maxey had to call him out. This is your young, up and coming guard who wants to call out a 9-year veteran how to lead a team. I mean, like, one of the biggest things I took away from all this is that Joel Embiid is a freaking 9-year veteran, and he still doesn't understand how to lead a team through a regular season. And he's like saying how he's confused and all that. Like, everyone just feels like no one's on the same page here in the Philadelphia 76ers. And it doesn't help that the big three that they have only played like 10 minutes together. Like, Paul George got injured the same game. Like, all three guys finally got a chance to play together. When you look at the way that he's producing right now, too, people are like, "Oh no, you just got a 5 years more of Tobias Harris and Paul George now." So, like, you know, obviously this is not gonna. At least you're hoping this is not gonna continue. You don't think this is gonna be the normal for the 76ers. But mixing the bad vibes, the fact that your biggest positive, your biggest positive this year has been your rookie two guard, who is like apparently your most consistent player. Then probably your second most consistent player is the guy you brought over from Europe. It's just not great vibes for the 76ers. Probably like the worst vibes in the league so far this year. Then you mix in with the fact that they can't shoot the three ball. They are not like playing well defensively. And the guys that they brought in to play real rotational minutes for them, guys who have been good role players in other teams, they're not performing. Like, I mean, you can't get worse than this, but where do you see this going up?
Well, the net positive is Tyrese Maxey is back in the lineup, and that helps a lot because if their backcourt can be consistent, that's where the offense can be kind of resurged from, right? I mean, when you look at what Jared McCain is doing, along with the fact that we know Tyrese Maxey is more of a downhill player, their contrasting styles on offense give them a real dynamic 1-2 punch back there while they try to figure out what's going on with Joel Embiid, while they try to stave off the fact that Paul George is going to miss more time. So that's the number one thing you can put a real positive spin around is that their backcourt is young, their backcourt is athletic, and they're playing with fire. And those are three things that are really necessary for a team that is kind of losing their footing early on and still has real hopes of, making the postseason. Like this is a team that you have to remember, like the Eastern Conference, and we'll probably get into this on a different episode, but the Eastern Conference is still as wide open as you think it is. Like,
Yes.
despite the fact that the Philadelphia 76ers have 3 wins and they're down there with the Washington Wizards for the
Yeah.
worst record in the Eastern Conference, there is still so much wiggle room for them to get back into this, considering the status of the standings right now. Where if I'm not mistaken, aren't the Detroit Pistons considered a top 7 team in the playoff structure right now?
They
Like,
are, well, they are like, it's okay. This is how weird the East is right now. They are
uh,
half a game outside of seventh, but they're also 11th right
you
now.
see what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's the misconstruction. Is like that because just a day or two ago they were right there about 6 or 7. So the
yeah,
fact that now the discrepancy between 6, 7, and 11 is so minuscule, it's like there's still so much room to be able to right this ship. The problem for the 76ers is you can only you can only go through these growing pains for but so long. This can still get out of hand. Let's remember that. Even with the talent that they have on this roster, with and Joel Embiid, with the Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, with the surges of Jared McCain, this team only still it only they go another month or so where they can't really reestablish themselves, kind of in a manner of like how we seen the Milwaukee Bucks over the last 2 weeks.
yeah,
If we don't see something like that happen sometime between now and the start of the new year, it's gonna slowly start to get out of hand, and it's gonna become much more difficult to get back in there. I think they have a month, I guess about a month and a week, really about a month to right this ship, because I think if they go into January and things are not starting to kind of even themselves out, they're going to be in a weird position, because although the Eastern Conference is as close as it is, every team in the East is competitive as hell. Every team for the most part has a mean streak to them, and every team in the East is putting up a legitimate fight, especially the teams that once upon a time were considered real tankers. Like there's no cupcakes across the entire league anymore. I don't think there's nobody that I think you pick off as an automatic dub. TV, we learned that when we saw the Trailblazers bust the Minnesota Timberwolves back-to-back nights,
yeah.
right? We know that there's no guaranteed nights anymore with some of these rosters, even though they look like teams that they should be able to take advantage of. So they got about a month to figure this out. Hopefully they can get Paul George within that time frame. And we have to see where it goes from there. Philly is in trouble though. I will say they have time, but they are in trouble. There's not a there, if we had to go for a panic meter, I'm at a cool 6-7 right now. I'm gonna be cool. I'm gonna be honest with you.
No, yeah, no, 100%. And you're right. They're lucky they're in the East because a 3-13 record, all you need is a good week and a half, and
Mm-hmm.
you're back into the mix. All you need is a good 4 or 5 winning streak. Hopefully that means Joel Embiid's back in the lineup. Hopefully that means Paul George is back in the lineup, which apparently with this injury he's only supposed to miss 1 or 2 games, so that means he should be back very, very shortly. But as long as they get that little nice little streak going, we saw with the Bucks. The Bucks could have easily been a topic if they continued their early season struggles, but they finally started to keep it together. They're at a 4 or 5 game winning streak right now. So that's all it takes in the Eastern Conference, and the Sixers clearly have the talent. They even found another gem in Jared McCain in order for them to even get even more life into that starting lineup. Like they have the pieces there. It's all about the commitment you're gonna get from your stars, how much Joel Embiid's gonna get back to being that number one guy. And if Paul George can freaking stay on the court, this man's on the first year of his 5 year contract. And if you already have these problems early, I mean, we knew that this is going to eventually be a bad contract down the line. If these problems are starting early, though, that's not great. That's not great. But are they going to be like still that top 6 team? I think they're still like they're more anything just like trending towards a play-in spot at this point with the way that the season's starting off.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is a team that just like I feel like they desperately need to figure out who they are because I don't think they're going to be able to get away with some of the logic they thought they were going to be able to come into the season with. Joel Embiid not playing back to backs, it's going to hurt them. Paul George not being able to stay healthy is going to hurt them. Remember, before the season even started, a lot of people was concerned about the big three playing consistently throughout the season was whether or not Joel Embiid and Paul George will be able to stay healthy. Tyrese Maxey has already missed games due to injury this
Yeah.
early in the season, which leaves even more room down the line for potential injury. Knock on wood that obviously that doesn't happen, but again, that leaves that to question as well. So this is a team that needs to figure out who they are, both with and without their stars on the floor. Um, and they got to do it soon. And TV, I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. I was thinking about this the other day. There cannot be, and over the last 6 to 7 years, there might not be a more cursed duo in basketball than Paul George and Joel Embiid, dude.
And they are on the
Like,
same team.
and
They're on
now
the
they play on the
same.
same squad, bro. That is insane to think about the injury history of both of these teams. I mean the injury history of both of these guys, the kind of on court and off court drama that both of these players have been involved with or surrounded by, and now they're on the same squad, and it feels like it's even more amplified, partially of course because they also play in Philly, which is one of the biggest national media spaces in sports, so that probably
Yeah.
doesn't help.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I literally don't think there's two more polarizing players when you think about like, being cursed, like just always seeming like they're in the wrong place at the wrong time than this duo of Joel Embiid and Paul George. And I just hope that it doesn't rear its ugly head any worse than it already has so far this season. I hope they are able to kind of right the ship because, like, Philly in the postseason is something we want to see, bro. We want to see this team with the way they're
Yeah.
constructed playing meaningful basketball. Them missing the postseason or just barely sneaking into the play-in tournament, like that's not the expectations of this team with the way they did their roster. That's not the expectations that were set with the chess moves that Daryl Morey put together over the last 2 seasons of letting
Yeah.
Ben Simmons, trading Ben Simmons um for James Harden, moving off of James Harden in an orderly manner to the LA Clippers, getting their draft picks back through the Clippers, all the movement that they
Yeah.
were able to make while also freeing up the space to go after a Paul George and still have such a strong all season, right? Like
Yeah.
they just like this is not how the grand scheme is supposed to. It's not how the grand scheme is supposed to play out, especially not in year one, man.
Yeah. No, people thought this was going to be the best team Joel Embiid has had. And look at what's happening right now. It's crazy. Imagine if this team still had Doc Rivers. The
Oh
amount of
God.
like the unlucky like the freaking curse factor would even go even higher. But I mean at the
Yeah.
same time, but I mean like Paul George and Joel Embiid are on the same team. That's enough for them. But yeah, let us
Right.
know what you guys think about the 76ers team down below. We're gonna talk a bit more positive about them very shortly because the next topic we're gonna be talking about so far, we're 1 month in, and I want to talk about this rookie class, Jay, because it's been a pretty like obviously we didn't have much we didn't know like what to really expect. It's not like
Mm,
last season where you have this one generational prospect in Victor Wembanyama, highly favored to be rookie of the year, and of course Chet Holmgren starting his first year. This year we're like, okay, who's gonna have the opportunity? Who's really gonna step up in this rookie class? And
mm.
there's some guys here and there really trying to step up, but it's made for a very interesting rookie of the year race. So what we're gonna do is go through our top three most best rookies that we've seen so far this year. We're gonna do a quick top three. We're gonna go with our threes first, then our twos, then our ones, and we're gonna talk about each of these guys going forward. So Jay, I'm gonna throw it over to you. Starting with your top three, who do you have at your number three in terms of rookie of the year so far?
So my three has changed a few times over the last couple of like days, actually. But I think I think the guy that's quickly vaulted up into that space, and I think he can get overtaken pretty quickly. But we'll see how it goes. Is Dalton Connect? The way he's been playing meaningful minutes for the Lakers as of late has really made up for the fact that their wing play has been spotty, especially with Rui Hachimura in and out of the lineup due to injury. This is a team that desperately, desperately needs a real shooter on this squad, and it's been helpful that Dalton has been able to step into that role and excel in that. I think we all understood when he was drafted that he was drafted to score the ball. We knew at Tennessee that he was not necessarily drafted as one of these two-way wings that we're used to people trying to like chase after. No, no, no. He's not that for this team. He is a guy that comes in, he gets you buckets, he stretches the floor, he creates a real opportunity for others to be able to have wide open driving lanes like a LeBron James, like a Austin Reeves, like a Anthony Davis, even to a certain extent. And he just opens things up in a real way. He recently, had that 27 point outing against New Orleans, and has really put together a good last 2 weeks. I don't want to overexert um my belief in Dalton as a top three rookie of the year candidate right now, because I still think that my guy is Zachary Ricochet, who I had as a lead candidate coming into the start of the season. It was kind of between him and Dalton for that three spot.
Mm,
And I still think that Zachary can easily kind of vault himself back into that space. I also think Zach Edey is another guy that ended up being on my short list
mhm.
that could overtake Dalton over the course of time. But as of right now, you just have to look at what's happening on the floor. And Dalton has put together a good last 2 weeks or so as a real utility player for them, and a real guy who's giving them buckets on a squad that, like, you think they have a ton of scorers, but the shot diet for this team is very confined outside of Dalton. Dalton gives them something different.
100%. And yes, I will talk more about Dalton a little bit later because I've been, again, very impressed by him and the fact that he's able to kind of just slot in to that starting lineup right away,
Mhm.
especially like this early on to the season. It's fantastic because, like you mentioned, like even though they have LeBron and AD, not much, 3-point shooting going on with this team, not much, shot creation. So it's good to have someone who can consistently hit the three ball. And so far this year, 45% on threes on 5 attempts per game for a rookie is very, very elite so far. So that is a great pickup for Don Knecht. I'm going to go to him a bit later. But for my number three, I'm going to stick with a guy who's been kind of consistent all year. No one is talking about this man at all, but he deserves some love. Jalen Wells of the Memphis Grizzlies. They've had a bunch of injuries to start the year so far. He's actually had to start 12 games. But so far in these 12 games, 12 points per game, 3 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 46% from the field, and 40% from three on 5 attempts per game. He stepped in, become a real rotational piece, and is continuing to, that Memphis Grizzlies trend where they end up just finding these second round picks, undrafted guys, like late first round picks, and being able to turn them into real rotational players every single year. And he's getting like, good minutes, and I think that he's going to be good there to either start there long term or even just be one of those key guys off the bench. Kind of like how they found like Vince Williams last year. This is kind of
Mhm.
their guy this year, and Jalen Wells, maybe even to a higher extent. So far this year, I mean, he's not getting too much love. The Grizzlies are kind of like middle of the pack in the West right now, but he's been a really good bright spot, especially in a time where John Morant hasn't really played that many games because of the injury. But shout out to Jalen Wells. He's at number three for me.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's kind of intriguing that you have him at three. That was actually my next guy on the list. I won't burn through that one because I know that that's where we agree at.
Yeah.
And I won't kind of overstep too much of what you said because I think we agree. But I think Jalen Wells has stepped in a real way on a team that has needed it, right? With the constant shifting of this roster in and
Yes.
out, it's been one of those bright points for them where he's been able to give them something offensively, but also he's taking on real defensive assignments, which I think is really important considering the fact that, like, he's a guy that I think you can interchange between him and Marcus Smart, Desmond Bain. Like, he's a good utility guy for them where I feel like you can put him next to a bunch of different players within their rotation and he can still provide something on both sides of the floor. And for the value that they got him in, remember, they got him in, what's that, about the mid second round? That's a
Yeah, like
value pick
the
that
39th overall pick. Yeah.
yeah, so early second roundish, that's a very solid value pick for them on a team that is always seems to draft well, right? And we
Yeah.
evoked Jay Huff's name most recently in one of the most recent podcasts, as well as another guy that they picked up. Um, uh, I mean, their team has been playing so well given a lot of their circumstances, also including, John Morant has missed the last 8 games. He actually is supposed to come back tonight as of us recording this. So
Hmm.
that's, another bright spot for
That's
them.
great for them. Yeah.
Yeah, team given the circumstance in the early portion of the season, they are punching above their weight. Jalen Wells has a lot to do with that. TV, this is a class that I think has a good handful of guys that I think you can say may not have like superstar potential, but there are some real good plug and play dudes. Maybe we'll even share a few of our honorable mentions that kind of maybe fit that bill of dudes who have like been playing
Yeah.
relatively well, and maybe they won't crack the top five for our rookie of the year by the time we put our real ballot together at the end of the season. But there's a couple of dudes that like you're gonna have to evoke their names now while they're showing you what they're showing you, because later on in the year, there's a likelihood that some more definitive names will, round out the top five. But there's a couple of
Yeah.
dudes that I think really deserve some love in the early goings of the season, because as rookies, they might not be like lighting the world on fire. Like some of the guys that we might talk about, like the Jared McCains of the world that we mentioned earlier on, or like Dalton
Yeah.
Connect, like I just shared earlier. But they're just guys that like when you look at these playoff teams later on and you see like how they contributed, you're like, damn, they meant something to this team. They meant something to this team through 82 games.
100%. And yeah, Jalen Wells is going to be like one of those guys who's going to do just that. But yeah, I mean, you went to number two already. You talked about Jalen Wells, which is good. And that's where I also have Dalton Connect. I mean, like,
Okay.
that's where I end up having Dalton. But
Hmm.
I just think that when it comes to him, like, Jalen Wells, again, has been like great this year. But what Dalton Connect has shown me this year is that he's already amongst the top of the league at a specific skill set. And to get that out of a rookie is crazy. I mean, like honestly, all of these guys being like that we're gonna mention on this list, them being outside of the lottery, them being in the second, like being a second round pick, like Jalen Wells, kind of just shows. I mean, kind of confirms like about the draft class that like anyone could really like step up here and be like a really good player. And Dalton Knecht has been one of those guys. JD Redick absolutely loves this dude, man. I mean, like you could
Yeah.
just like after, those ATO plays that they run for Dalton Knecht, he probably sees himself in Dalton Knecht and says, okay, this is how I would have wanted Stan Van Gundy to do it back in the day. How I would have
Hmm.
wanted Doc Rivers to use me a bit more. And he's trying to kind of use that into Dalton Connect. And he's already had some big games. He's been a fan favorite in terms of like LeBron keeps talking about him all the time and how great he is to play like next to him, and kind of just shows that put shooters around LeBron James, things will succeed. And Dalton Connect is being one of those guys. He just knows, like he's just so good in terms of having that Klay Thompson effect where he doesn't need the ball, and all he has to do is just move around the perimeter to find his spots, and he's able to do that. He's had a couple of heaters this year, and maybe it is the Laker bias a little bit just because of the amount of people are talking about him. But I think that his impact in terms of like that side of the ball where the Lakers absolutely need it,
Hmm.
I think it's been great. I think I have him at number two.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to mention too, is that Lakers bias could really help Dalton throughout the season if he plays relatively
Yeah.
well. That's something that could kind of boost his stock a little bit, and especially because I think we both have the same top guy as rookie of the year. Where these teams finish, I think actually is going to matter a little bit more than in past years.
Hmm.
Because normally the impact of rookies out the gate is something that is very minuscule, right? It doesn't really mean as much because most rookies are not impactful season. They might be good, they might even be great, but they're not necessarily contributing to a level of, producing a playoff team or creating a team that you think can make a run throughout the postseason, right? But
Yeah.
like for example, Jared McCain, he has to be good for this Philadelphia 76ers team to really be considered a championship contender with the way their team has played so far during the season. Dalton Connect has to be a guy who like plays relatively well in order for this Lakers team to continue to get the kind of championship buzz that people are kind of starting to hop on the bandwagon for as of late. Like there's a couple of guys where you look at them and you think about what their contributions are and what they mean in this first year for them, and like players like those two in particular, and there's a few other ones I can think of that might really matter in terms of whether they can make the postseason, whether they can make the play-in tournament, being things where their rookie year will really influence it. But those two guys in particular, like those two guys in two very big media markets, by the way, have a real opportunity to continue to make the most of these minutes. And if they do so, like it might literally just come down to whose team is better, because of the
Yeah.
fact that like they're both producing at such a high level for teams that are looking to play like championship basketball come like, you know, April, May.
Exactly. And I think like again, like with all these teams, like yeah, like you mentioned, like with all these teams that we talked about here in this list, all these teams like have some sort of like aspirations. And the fact that we will see, further on down this season who's going to make an impact on like a kind of on a already established roster. Kind of think of like Malcolm Brogdon a few years ago, where
Yeah.
it was him versus Joel Embiid. Sure, Joel Embiid had the better stats, obviously in less games as well. But Malcolm Brogdon was a key part to that Milwaukee Bucks team that was finally showing their true colors and being like a near championship contender already. So maybe that sort of thing is going to be important in this race with Connect Wells, and then with the number one guy, like you mentioned, both of us are going to have Jared McCain. So I'm going to go to him shortly, but we talked a lot about the Philadelphia 76ers earlier. He's been a bright spot. Jay, how good has he been this year?
I mean, he's been special, man. I was looking into some of the statistics earlier, and it was really eye opening to look at the fact that this dude, he's just been lighting it up in terms of scoring the basketball. Something that also stood out to me is just the fact that like he is the fourth player on the roster already in terms of shot attempts per game. Obviously, within the sample size, you could make an argument that he probably is their second highest like shot attempt guy over the last couple of weeks. He has a usage percentage that's close to like 30%. I was looking at some of the standings for that. It's above guys like D Book, LeBron James. Like there's a handful of like superstar caliber guys where instead it's Jared McCain that's higher up on that list of total usage throughout this early portion of the season.
Yeah.
He's easily stood out as the Sixers' best shooter, and it's not necessarily he's hitting at a high clip. It's also that he's doing it on insane volume. I believe he's taken near 7 3-point attempts per game,
Yeah.
which is huge for them. He stepped in and been able to do something for them while holding down the backcourt on a team that's desperately needed it. With all the drama so far throughout the beginning of the season, Tyrese Maxey missing time, Paul George missing time, Joel Embiid's on the court and off the court drama, also him missing time. The fact that guys that we've expected to kind of come in and do well for them in the early goings of Reggie Jackson, Kelly Oubre coming back, Caleb Martin have not played up to par. The bright spot for this Philadelphia 76ers team has been Jared McCain. If it wasn't for him, I think a lot of people would be thinking that this team would be an even hotter water than they are. And that feels almost funny to say, considering the fact that they're at the bottom of the East right now. But their bright spot so far during this starting portion to the season has been Jared McCain. He's been absolutely special. I don't know if this sticks this way, but I do believe that he's a guy that if he continues to crack the starting lineup for them, which he should, I definitely believe he deserves more. He deserves to play over a Kyle Lowry, play over a Reggie Jackson. If he continues to maintain his spot in the starting lineup next to Tyrese Maxey on a roster, I think we talked about this recently, on a roster where they could walk out a starting five of Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, Joel Embiid, and then name your four man, whether it's Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin,
Or
shoot,
then, yeah.
even Gershon, right? And you put
Yeah.
yourself in a position to have a really solid offense. And Gershon actually might be making a good excuse for him to be a starting four with the fact that he's shooting the three ball at a pretty good clip his damn self.
Exactly, man. I
So
mean,
yeah,
yeah, Jared McCain has been absolutely fantastic. I mean, people are gonna be obviously kind of concerned about a small backcourt, Tyrese Maxey being 6'1", he being 6'2". But we've seen with the Cleveland Cavaliers that when you have this two-man backcourt, especially if they're this dynamic on the offensive end, it can work. And it also works because Jared McCain is so good off the ball, man. Like the way that he is able to just find himself open on these threes just by, taking a few steps to the left so he's more in the periphery of the ball handler. Someone just like relocating himself so he finds himself on the open spot on the court. He knows how to do that so well at such a young age. Not only he's doing that, he's showing like maybe not the best passing, but he's also showing good playmaking ability to create shots for himself. I just hope that we could see how his play is going to translate when you have a healthy Paul George, a healthy Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey. But so far this year, I mean, just looking at freaking Jared McCain's statistics, he's only like a 16 point per game scorer. If you remove those early games of the season, he's basically a 20 point per game scorer as a starter. He's also shooting 40% from three, 46% from the field, 94% from the free throw line. The only thing you want as a guard, you wanted to see him improve his passing. That'll come with time. But clearly he's had the opportunity, open there for the Philadelphia 76ers with that really horrendous start, especially with the injuries. But he's taking advantage of it, and he's shown that even though like you have someone like kind of deep in the draft and someone like deep in this roster, when the opportunity comes and you show that, you know, you're better than like what even they expect, you're gonna give them no choice but to put him into the starting lineup. And I think that, especially with the way he started this year, he's going to be like a ultimate a fixed player in that starting lineup now.
Yeah, and him having a fixed role on this team is also going to matter so much too. I mean, this is going to be one of those things that plays out really importantly, right? In a draft class where we weren't really sure where the star power was. We mentioned this when we were actually doing our preseason picks for rookie of the year. Minutes played is actually going to be like a pretty important stat
Exactly.
in this year's rookie of the year run. Obviously, statistical performances and their actual contribution to their team. Um, the weight of their contribution. Are you playing on a playoff team? Are you playing scrap minutes for a bad team? Those different things also matter a little bit too. But how much you're on the floor is going to matter more than anything in a grouping like this, because you could be a guy who scores 20 points per game, but if you play on a team that's bad and you only play 15 minutes, sure, you score 20 points a game in 15 minutes, but you play on a team that doesn't play well. So what are you playing against? Second units? Are you playing against, are you playing in garbage time a lot? These are the different things to consider. So minutes played is going to matter a lot. Minutes per game is going to matter a lot. Contribution to playoff teams, I think, is also going to mean a good amount, because there's not necessarily the star power within this group to say like they supersede whether or not their team is good or not. I don't think there's any talent so far within the early going of this season that you can say supersede their individual performances supersede whether or not their team is good enough or not. Like Jared McCain, for example, playing on Philly, we all believe that this is still going to be a playoff team at the end of the season. They might be not off to the greatest start, but there's a
Hmm.
few different things you can point to with that. But in
Hmm.
the framework of a lot of the bad teams, right? The Portland Trail Blazers, the Washington Wizards of the world, those guys are going to have a lot harder of an uphill battle because of the fact that they're going to play well and they're going to play a lot, but they're going to play on teams that are not necessarily playing, meaningful games as much on a night to night basis.
100%. But yeah, that's gonna be our list. If there's any other guys that you want to shout out quickly before we move on to the next topic of that's who you kind of consider here.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously there were a few guys that popped up. I told you Zachary Riche and Zach Edey, the two Zachs. There were two guys that like just barely fell out the top three. If we did it, would have easily rounded out the rest. To go past that, loved what Donovan Clingan has been doing so far this
I was
season.
gonna mention Donovan Clay. He is like looking like
Yeah,
a good. They got to move DeAndre Ayton, bro. They got
dude.
to move him.
Between Aiton and Robert Williams, somebody has to go. Somebody needs to be on the trade block. Give Donovan Clingan the minutes. I mean, the dude has been a defensive stalwart. He sets screens like an MFer. He really, really gives them a different dynamic compared to those two. Like you can just see the kind of space he creates for his guards on screens so much more significantly than DeAndre Ayton. I applaud you guys to one day kind of watch the highlights of a Scoot Henderson, of an Anthony Simons on DHOs and in the pick and roll game, and watch the difference between when DeAndre Ayton is on the floor and when Donovan Clingan is on the floor. It's like night and day in terms of what they're able to do on the ball. And then another guy who I don't think is going to get a whole lot of love because he plays on a stacked roster, AJ Mitchell out there for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's a dude who I don't think is going to get a whole lot of rookie of the year buzz, but
Yeah.
watch the man play, man. He's a steady hand. He follows the real Tyus Jones archetype in terms of guys that you like, where he doesn't necessarily play like Tyus, but he's a steady hand. He's a guy you can put on the floor. He can guard. You can mix and match him next to any kind of guard rotation that the Oklahoma City Thunder have. He's a very good ball handler, and he's a dude who I think that like he just gives them something that they desperately need off the bench. Was another guy who can kind of keep the ship afloat. I love those kind of guys.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's an archetype that I'm a big fan of. Is a traditional point guard slash traditional off guard, type where they can just kind of control the game on a night to night basis when they're on the
Mhm.
floor and really kind of play at their own pace. And he's a guy who like really excels at that. He's not going to get a whole lot of push this year again because their roster is just so stacked and there's so many other guys that you could talk about and highlight on that Oklahoma City Thunder team. But AJ Mitchell for them has just been he hasn't been special per se, but he's a
He's
guy
been
that I think
solid.
is
He's been
just
solid.
he's just gonna be a dude who like when you look up the stats won't say much, but when you actually watch the tape, it's like wow, he just creates so many opportunities for his team. He's a real hockey assist type of dude. And you need those. You need those out of a rookie, man. You need those kind of guys who just can come in and be connectors out the gate.
No, 100%. And with the amount of like depth that the Thunder have, especially with their young core, if you're able to stand out, it's kind of someone like an AJ Mitchell this early on in your career, it says
Yeah,
a lot because this is a pretty deep Thunder team. And with a team that finally got Isaiah Hardenstein back, like and like especially early on especially when they didn't have any centers, like he was able to get some minutes there and actually like play some like well and meaningful basketball so far this year. It's been great. Yeah, shout out to AJ Mitchell. I was about to mention Donovan Clingan. He's been a beast for the Trailblazers. It just makes me want them to get rid of DeAndre Ayton more. We're gonna talk
yeah,
about DeAndre Ayton very shortly,
yeah,
but um, gotta shout out those guys and someone who's gonna quickly climb up the ranks. Stephon Castle, man.
yeah,
Stephon Castle finally getting some like more burn there for the San Antonio Spurs. You really going for that 3-point shot, 4 attempts per game. Yes, the 3-point shooting is not there yet, 28%, but he's really trying to improve that area of his game. Playing beside Chris Paul has really helped out his trying to figure out where to like find his place in terms of like playmaking next to the rest of the guys on the team, and he's getting his shooting percent, his scoring numbers up there. So shout out to Stephon Castle. I think he's someone that's gonna probably build his case more. Hopefully, when Wemby comes back and they get to play more with each other, but he's gonna start rising up the ranks. I think he's been really good this year.
yeah. Shout out your boy Jonathan Mogbo as well, dude. That's another dude who like
Another dude, man.
That's
He's
that's another guy who he started out a little bit hotter. He's come back to earth a little bit as of recent, but that's a guy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm keeping my eye on Jonathan. He's gonna be a good get for you guys in Toronto. I have this feeling that with the way he fits you guys' mold for what you guys want to do and the way that he just like is a high energy player, he's gonna be one of those guys that like he might not get a whole lot of love in the rookie of the year race, kind of very similar to AJ Mitchell, like I mentioned a second ago, but like he's gonna be a dude who like when you look up and you watch the tape, you're gonna be like, that dude's impactful. That guy
no,
does something for this team different than some of the other dudes on the roster. And I mean that genuinely means a lot, bro. In a class where like there's not you didn't come into the season looking at like who can you didn't view this class as littered with difference makers. When you look
yeah,
up and you see a handful of guys who are like real solid contributors, maybe not in the box score, but like just in the way they provide for their team. Um, that's great, man. I mean, I
yeah,
think that's an underrated thing about the draft is that not every single draft pick has to be this 20-point per game scorer, this defensive lock build,
yeah.
this has to be in the DPOY conversation as a 7-foot center. Like they don't not everybody has to come out the gate as that type of guy in order to be considered a very solid rookie. And this I think this is gonna be a good year to represent that in terms of like having a good draft with strong role players is not a bad thing. It's not a
Yeah.
bad thing at all.
A lot of these guys are going to be 10-year vets. Well, I will say that for sure.
Facts. There's a
They're
lot
going to
of
be 10.
Danny Green, PJ Tucker s type dudes where like you're just gonna every time you look up, they've always got a space on a team. They've always got a role on a team, and they're never worried about where they fit in the league because they always have a translatable skill that will keep them around and keep them playing high level basketball for teams that are going to be making pushes. And I mean, you can't you can't be more happy than to see that there's gonna be a litany of those guys. Because before you know it, man, we're gonna need that next generation of hoopers, man. Before you know it, we're gonna look up at some of the guys that we've um kind of come to
Yeah.
grow, know, and love for the longest. They're gonna be out the way, and we're gonna see a new crop of superstars rise up. But that also means a new crop of role players also needs to rise in order for us to continue to see this league grow. So it's special, man. It's special.
Yeah, it's good. And thank you for shouting out Jonathan Mogul.
Yeah.
This man is like does everything decent on the basketball court. He needs to be a bit more aggressive scoring. But I've been to like 6 Raptor games. This man like fights for everything, like every single ball, man.
Super competitive. Lug Marbo through the
Super.
start of the position. At the start of the season so far. I know he had a little hiccup injury where he missed maybe I think 2 games somewhere in
Yeah.
there. But yeah, man, there's just like I said, there's a lot of guys to like. Maybe not anybody that you love just yet, even with like the Jared McCain, the Jalen Wells, Dalton Connects that we mentioned earlier. Maybe nobody that like you love yet, but there's a lot of guys that we're gonna like by the end of the season. And TV, sneaky thing to keep in mind.
Hmm.
Remember, a rookie of the year is one thing, but the all rookie teams it's gonna be kind of interesting to pick 10 players to make up those two teams by the end of the year. Because I think this class, in terms of having to put together a 10-man group, is deeper than we gave credit. And
Yes.
once we start, maybe first team will be a little easy, but I think second team is gonna get really, really difficult by the time we get to like February, March. I think it's gonna get a lot more difficult, man.
100%. It's good. It's definitely gonna be a good one. I'm excited to see who's gonna actually like fill out the rest of these all working teams. It's gonna be good. But yeah, tell us down below what you guys think. Who is your top three for rookie of the year? Any guys that we didn't even mention so far? There's probably a lot of guys like on the other teams that we haven't even really talked about. So
Mhm.
let us know down below what you guys think. Jay, we're gonna move on to the next topic, and this one we're gonna. It's. I feel like we haven't talked trades enough, so we're gonna talk trades right now.
Yeah.
Not specific trades,
Mm.
but trying to figure out how we're gonna fit some of these guys that potentially might get traded this offseason. This by this trade deadline. So we have three names here. Not like trying to find trade packages for them, but try to find like where your most ideal landing spot is for each of these guys. We're gonna go through each of them, whether the teams that we're signing them to have the pieces or not to get them. This is where we think is going to be the best ideal situation for them. So Jay, I'm going to tell you the first guy here, and I kind of
Uh-huh.
hinted at him earlier when
Mhm.
talking about Donovan Clingan because of his resurgence. DeAndre Ayton. You see how good Robert Williams is playing right now, how good Donovan Clingan is. They probably want to keep those guys, further on in this rebuild. I mean, Robert Williams can get traded too, but at the same time, I think that DeAndre Ayton, that's the one guy that, like, yeah, I think we can like move off him. Like, we can try to move off him as soon as we can. But where do you think he'll fit next? Because it feels like his time in the Trailblazers is kind of ending.
Oh man, you know what's so funny about that, man? DeAndre Ayton really does not fit anywhere perfectly with the way that he's played over the last year and a half. But the team that I feel like desperately, desperately needs center help is the Charlotte Hornets, man. The Charlotte Hornets
Yeah,
cannot buy consistency at the center position to save their life. And I don't know if that's a great fit for them, for him more specifically. Um, but I mean, if you really think about it, man, the Charlotte Hornets center position is one of the more underwhelming front court spots in the league. I mean, Mark Williams can never seem to stay on the floor. I mean, I don't think we've seen him even a
I don't
lick
think he's
this
played this
season.
year. Yeah, I don't think he's
Yeah,
played
I
this
don't
year.
think we've
Yeah.
seen him a lick this season, which has put a lot more emphasis on like the Nick Richards of the world to have to play so much more. And I think that's a position they've desperately lacked real talent at for a while now. If you kind of really like look back over the last couple of years, um that's a team that I also think if they got more athletic in the front court, it could really give them a different dynamic. We know how special that, LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller are in that backcourt, right? And we know when Miles Bridges is healthy, that's a good three-man unit right there of LaMelo,
Yeah.
Brandon, and then Miles. But that 4-5 spot, it's very underwhelming for this Charlotte Hornets team. And I'm not saying DeAndre Ayton necessarily changes life, but I also do think that LaMelo Ball is like the more dynamic version, significantly more dynamic version of what DeAndre Ayton got with Chris Paul in Phoenix. And I think that could mean a lot for resurging DeAndre's career. I also think the fact that the Charlotte Hornets play so fast up and down the floor, and the fact that LaMelo Ball is such a proponent of pushing the rock. If I'm not mistaken, they're not like super high in pace this season, but you see them on the floor. They're one of the more special teams in transition this year. That just creates opportunities for DeAndre where I think he could average like 10 to 12 points easily just off of being available in the low block, running the floor hard, and having a dynamic passer like LaMelo Ball. Like LaMelo easily outclasses anybody on the Portland Trailblazers right now as a passer and facilitator, right?
Yeah.
So if we're talking about resurging DeAndre Ayton's career, he's gonna need a top flight point guard that can get him the ball in his spots. And I think of all the teams that need a center, LaMelo might be the best point guard pairing for a guy like that.
Yeah, no, I honestly think like I was like in the same boat as you in terms of like, did you know there's not a lot of space for DeAndre Ayton in this league, especially with a lot of teams like have their either center for the future or they're center for the now.
Yeah.
So like finding a place for DeAndre Ayton is tough. I was thinking the Washington Wizards just because maybe you want to move Alex Sard to like the power forward position where he could be more of a roamer than being like that top, one-on-one defender at the big man position. And
Yeah.
DeAndre Ayton could potentially at least slide into that spot, and Alex Sard can deal with more of the defensive work.
Yeah.
But the Hornets are the move. The Hornets are the move just because they need to try something at that center position. I know they liked what they got from Mark Williams early, but the fact that he can't even stay on the floor, like this is an injury that's had him miss time since the end of last year, and the
Yeah.
fact that it's still like carrying over to this year that we haven't been able to see him on the court speaks volumes to like kind of like what type of injury it's going to be and like how it's going to affect him going forward. So if there's anyone to take a chance on him, might be the Hornets. Again, we don't know what pieces we're going to bring back to Portland, but if there's a team that can potentially, like you said, revive his career, it's going to be Charlotte. So I do like that choice.
Yeah, that was probably the best name I had. When you look at all the other rosters, you made a really good point, dude. The center groupings for a lot of these rosters is kind of set. Like, it was set pretty well, even. Like, yeah, sure, if the Warriors could get him for pennies on the dollar, to be kind of in that rotation around Trace Jackson Davis, and maybe you pull back on a Kevon Looney, sure, I'm sure they would love that. I'm
Yeah.
sure that the Denver Nuggets would love to swap one DeAndre for another and move out DeAndre Jordan as their backup center and at least get a more
Yes.
athletic guy in DeAndre Ayton. You know, they obviously were looking for a center. That's why they drafted Deron Holmes before he unfortunately came up injured before the
Yeah.
season started. So, you know, they're looking for a backup center pretty strong. But in terms of like who realistically needs a center that I think also has the real scratch to go get one, Charlotte's really the only team that I think even fits for a guy like them. Obviously, you know, again, the Lakers would love to have a good backup center. The Utah Jazz have a million centers, so I don't think they need anybody. The Pelicans need a solid center, but they need everything to a certain extent right now.
Yeah.
They're one of those teams that desperately kind of needs to figure out what their identity even is going to be this season, given the fact that it's been such a rough start and so many injuries are piling up.
Hmm.
But I mean, a lot of the other teams you would normally consider they have centers, right? Like the Bulls still have Nikola Vucevic right now. The
Yeah.
Nets just paid Nicholas Claxton, and they still have a solid, you know, front court rotation.
Right.
We don't know what's up with the Hawks just yet, but you know they're pretty settled with Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu at the moment. Like there's teams that you would think might value his skill set, but like by what means would they go about acquiring him? Because if you have to even remotely consider a first round pick for DeAndre Ayton, I don't think any of the teams that I just named are willing to come up
No.
off him for him to just end up becoming their backup center. Charlotte was the only place I went down the list where I'm like, dang, he could probably start day one. So
Yes.
yeah,
No, no, I'm 100% agree with you there. All right. Next guy, Jay. Brandon Ingram.
yeah,
I mean, the Pelicans don't have really any players. Honestly, he's been one of the guys who at least has been able to stay on the court for the for the New Orleans Pelicans. But at the same time, expiring contract, you don't want to lose him out for nothing. You probably don't want to have him take up another max spot on your roster. So
yeah.
more likely he's about to be moved. But Jay, where would you want to see Brandon Ingram?
Where would I want to see him? Where I want to see him and where I think he could realistically land are two totally different things. So I'll give you the team that I think I would be really kind of interested to see him on the roster for. That would actually be Memphis. I think Memphis would be a really interesting squad for them because having a secondary shot creator on ball is something that we've always wondered about for the longest, right? We've penciled in a
Yeah.
lot of different wing superstars as a potential consolidation squad for Memphis to go out and go get somebody, consolidate so many of the guys that they have on their roster. You know, they've been so good at drafting, but we've kind of wondered who that next like perimeter superstar was going to be for them. And I don't necessarily know if Brandon Ingram is that, but I do think he has the potential to be that. I think that he is a good second option star. I think he is a good connector when he's a dude that plays with second units. I think he's a guy that on this Memphis Grizzlies team, they have so many good defenders around him that he doesn't necessarily have to be a top flight defender at the wing spot. Granted, it would help if he was more of a two-way guy, but I also think playing with Memphis would influence him to have a little bit more energy on the defensive end of the court because they have so much more of an established offensive identity. Um I think that's the team I would be more excited to see him land on. A team that I think would be more likely for him to land on is a name that's actually come up pretty frequently as of late. There's two. Is the LA Clippers is a team that I think is one that
Okay, yeah.
that's come up a pretty decent amount. Shout out to Pee Wee the Plug over with those guys that numbers on the board as well. He actually did that as part of one of his rebuild series, and it was an interesting dynamic, but it's one that's picked up steam in real life actually. As a guy that can be, a real building piece for the LA Clippers in their next, iteration of this team, given the fact that, look, man, James Harden, he's going to be on his way out anytime soon now, given the fact that he only has I think maybe one more year under contract. And you pair that with the fact that we do not know the future of Kawhi Leonard, right? So having him as a dynamic wing guy that you can maybe start things off with, paired with a Ivica Zubac, that might be a good way to that might be a good route to go. And then the other team is the Bulls. I mean, another guy that we're gonna end up talking about as to round out this section of the podcast is Zach LaVine. I've heard Zach LaVine for Brandon Ingram straight up brought up probably for the last year and a half. And I don't love it that much as a Bulls fan, but I understand the logic. I understand the logic for both teams. And seeing a wing on the Chicago Bulls with a pulse offensively does sound like a breath of fresh air. I'm not gonna lie, because
Yeah.
I mean, granted, we had DeMar DeRozan, the last two seasons, but Patrick Williams has just not really lived up to what we want him to be. Montez Buzelis is going to be a slow burn. Obviously, Ayo Dosunmu is more of a 2 than he is a 3. He's had to play up just kind of positionally based off the fact that our team's a lot smaller. Excuse me. So yeah, those are probably the three teams that come up. I'd love to see him on Memphis, but LA and the Bulls have come up a lot as potential destinations as well.
Yeah, no, that was gonna be my team, the Memphis Grizzlies. I think that like,
Oh, okay, cool,
yeah,
cool,
no,
cool.
that
That's
is
not
like
just
my
me then.
ideal in terms of an ideal team. Again, coming with
Yeah,
a package might be a bit difficult,
yeah,
but ideally seeing him in the Memphis Grizzlies team would be very very interesting, especially if you pair him up with like Bane. You can move him back to his natural 2 position. Morant, Jaren Jackson. Now you have the inclusion of Zach Edey into the roster.
yeah.
Brandon Ingram kind of like slides perfectly in. And the thing is, like, they don't really have many like like wing shot creators. They really just like when it comes to like just like small guards and also Jaren Jackson, but he'll fit in. I think he like it's a great place for him to fit in terms of like being able to create for himself. And I think that that's something like where like a lot of teams like always want to have like a lankier like power like a small forward power forward type where they can be able to move downhill. And I think he's a good 3 level scorer to add to that team as well. He just gives them a different dynamic, and I really do think he'd be a great fit. Again, the package would be tough, but I think he would have fit there. I think that would be a great fit for him. The other team I was thinking about, I mean, the Clippers definitely came to mind for sure for me as well. But I was
Mhm.
thinking potentially like Detroit Pistons.
That's a
Like
good
Adam,
one. That's a good one
Detroit
too.
Pistons. Like it's just basically all you see is like you could be a better version of Tobias Harris, can't you, Brandon Ingram? That's basically what I could see there, and I think that would be someone that would be great to have beside Kate Cunningham and all those type of players there. So I think for in terms of like his spot, I think realistically the Clippers probably is the best spot for him. I don't know if the Bulls want to like. I feel like that's not really a rebuild move. It's another one of those Bulls like sidestep moves instead of like moving forward or backwards.
Very on
So
brand. Very on
very on
brand.
brand for the Chicago Bulls, 100%.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of a place where it's like, okay, a team like a playoff contender team that can probably use him right away, the Grizzlies would be the place for me. I would 100% agree with that.
Right.
Last player though, Jay. You mentioned him earlier.
Yeah.
Your boy Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
Where would you want to see Zach at, man? I know he's been great this year. I can't even front. He has been great this year.
For
But
sure.
more than anything, it's been a great tryout to see what teams could actually trade them for him.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's definitely putting on one for the trade packages, 100%. As a guy who was worried, remember, this was a guy who did not have a trade market at all. This was a dude who, at one point, Adrian Wojnarowski said the only team that was really even remotely pursuing him around the trade deadline last year was the Detroit Pistons. That was the only team we could seem to get on the phone for a Zach LaVine. We would hope that obviously he has a much more significant trade market this season with the way he started out the year. I'm gonna give you two teams. Obviously, the first one that came up beforehand was the New Orleans Pelicans, right? I
Yeah.
obviously think that if you think about a lineup when everybody's healthy, where you can have a Zach Levine paired with DeJounte Murray in the backcourt. That's very reminiscent of him playing next to Lonzo Ball when healthy 2 years ago. Obviously, Lonzo's been in and out of the lineup so far this year, but more reminiscences of 2 to 3 years ago when Lonzo Ball first got on the roster. Their dynamic play style of the 1-2 punch. One plays off guard, but he's more of a facilitator. The other one is obviously the knockdown shooter, more athletic. But in this case, DeJounte Murray and Zach Levine would both be guys who can kind of slash, play at a high level. DeJounte's a high level passer. Zach Levine is still a high level shooter for that team. That's a very good backcourt. And if you move off of Brandon Ingram in that trade, you still have a Trey Murphy. I would assume you still have a Herb Jones who can play a more natural position of playing like the 3 man, or you have Trey Murphy start at the 3. Yves Messi has been really solid at the center position. And then whenever Zion Williamson decides to be healthy, you have easily the most like dynamic 1-2 punch around the basket in Zach
Yeah.
Levine and Zion Williamson, right? Definitely one of the more bouncy,
Yes.
groups
Yes.
in the league, right? So that would obviously be like the one that stands out. My other team is look, man, we've been building this team by accident for the last 3 to 4 years now.
Yeah.
Look, man, we've been building the Orlando Magic for the Orlando Magic
Yeah.
for the better part of the last 3 to 4 seasons now, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And KCP has been out to a relatively rough start. Seems like a guy who might be a little bit better coming off the bench at this point in his career. Kind of sad to say, given the fact that he's been such a contributor on playoff teams like the Los Angeles Lakers or the Denver Nuggets of recent. But they need some dynamics at the point guard slash 2 guard position. I've been saying this for the last 2 to 3 years. Obviously, the name that I've been a proponent of is Anthony Simons, right? He's more of a
Yeah.
point guard for their team. Although he's more of a scoring guard, he fits more of the point guard mold. But Zach Levine is a good secondary option, I think, as a guy. If you're looking for a dynamic offensive engine on the perimeter, look at what Franz Wagner has been able to do so far this
Yeah.
year without Paulo Banchero. If they're able to add Paulo back into the mix of that, who was having a career year to start the season off before going down with injury, you pair that in with a Zach Levine on the offensive side on the perimeter. You still have a Wendell Carter, right? You still have a solid rotation on the back end with an Anthony Black. Um you have a Jalen Suggs to play point guard next to Zach Levine, right? You
Yeah.
put yourself in a position where you can empower Jalen Suggs as like you're just gonna be the point guard, right? Almost kind of like how we saw
Yeah.
Marcus Smart for the Boston Celtics a few seasons ago, where they tried the Isaiah Thomas, they did the Kyrie Irving, and eventually they got to the point where they're like, look, Marcus, you know what? We've been beating around the bush this whole time. Marcus, you're the point guard. We know you're
Yeah.
more defensive oriented, but like you be the point guard. Same thing could be for Jalen Suggs. Like Jalen Suggs, you be the point guard. But then we have a dynamic 2 guard and Zach Levine, Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter. That starting 5 alone sounds insane. Insane by itself. And then you mean to tell me you still have an Anthony Black off the bench. You still have yourself in a position where you can still look at a Jonathan Isaac to be like a 20-minute per game guy off the bench for you defensively. Like that would be an insane rotation for a team that also fits really well around Zach. Like Zach might be the biggest defensive weak link of anybody on the roster by that point, right? And definitely in
Yeah.
the starting lineup. Like of everybody on the starting lineup, everybody would be able to make up for Zach Levine's defensive shortcomings. But I also think that Orlando, with the way they've played defensively this year, Zach Levine might be able to play up to the point where like he might not become an elite defender, you know what I mean, at the 2 guard position. But I think
Yeah.
he has the capability to be so much better on the defensive end than like he's been. So and next to a younger, more athletic team like the Orlando Magic, like he has a chance to do that. Imagine KCP off the bench. You have, like I said beforehand, Jonathan Isaac. You still have like a Gary Harris probably still on this team. Obviously, we know Mo Wagner's never allowed to leave the roster as long as
Yeah.
Franz is there, right? Like that's a rotation that's crazy where you can say that the Orlando Magic have a 9-man roster that like is going to be dynamic and is going to be a team we have to watch come postseason time. Like I said at the beginning of this, bro, we've been building the Orlando Magic vicariously for the last 4 years anyway.
Yeah,
We
no,
might as well
honestly,
give them the cherry on top to finally finish this rebuild, man.
yeah. In terms of a realistic spot, I think that is the spot for him. Like, it just feels like it's like a match made in heaven at this point. Like, my only thing with that is that like Franz and Paolo have been so good on the ball this year. Like,
Yeah.
do you really want to take away like opportunities from them? I guess again, like Zach would help, but like imagine if like you get that like duo of Paolo and Wagner work like and like Franz working, then you have the rest of the guys just defending at a high level. Like
Yeah.
that could be something special. But Zach there would definitely help, and I think again in terms of like perfect fits, in terms of like where we have seen him for years, like the last like year and a half or so, it's probably the Magic. But
Yeah.
man, Jay, if we see this man on the Golden State Warriors,
Oh my God. I was afraid you were gonna say this name.
if
I've
we
heard this
see,
pick up steam. I've heard this pick up steam.
I like again, I don't know the trade package. Again, I don't know the trade package.
Yeah.
But with this high-powered three-point shooting offense that they have, they got the most out of Buddy Hield. You're gonna get Buddy Hield on freaking roids if you get Zach LaVine here
Dude.
onto the team.
Dude.
Like, imagine like at some point getting Klay Thompson last year. Obviously, you want him to move off ball more, but when you have Steph Curry on the court, when you have Draymond like facilitating the offense, he's gonna find himself open more times than not. And then this team's gonna encourage the 3-point shot. And now with the amount of space they have and like going into the paint, like Zach just has so much space to work with. I think in terms of like what could really maybe solidify the Warriors as like that real team. It's like, okay, you know what? So far this season they've been great, but what's like, okay, this team is like serious about trying to make a deep run again. Zach LaVine, again, I know he's been playing great. Maybe he might warrant some sort of a trade package, but it's not going to be like, as much of an as than like a Lauri Markkanen who just signed a new deal or some other stars in the league. I think Zach LaVine would be pretty good.
Man, I've heard that name pick up steam so much, and obviously part of that has to do with the fact that like they've been starting Lindy Waters the third at two guard so far this season to kind of maintain that continuity between Brandon Pajemski and Buddy Hield off the bench. Um, I do think that when I was looking at trade packages that made sense, the one that obviously comes to mind is the fact that the Bulls are going to want like a Jonathan Kuminga in the trade, and that's going to matter a lot. The
Yes.
name that would probably help with matching salary would be probably Andrew Wiggins.
Hmm.
Um, there's a world where
Who's
maybe
been
you
good
could
this year?
do,
Who's been good this
yeah,
year?
he's been solid this year. There is a world where maybe you could do Jonathan Kuminga and then maybe like Kyle Anderson, and then you kind of layer on the picks, and maybe that gets it done for the Bulls. Because at the end of the day, getting Jonathan Kuminga as the reward probably is much more notable than some of the other trade packages that the Bulls
For
could
sure.
get.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for example, with Orlando, right? I mentioned like an Anthony Black maybe still being on the Orlando Magic, but if we're being honest, right? Like Orlando would probably have to throw like an Anthony Black into the trade in order for the
Hmm.
Bulls to say yes. Like they're
Yeah.
going to want like Anthony Black, um, probably maybe Jet Howard or Gary Harris and picks, right? They're gonna want something like that where there is a young prospect and down the line draft capital in order to really come up off of Zach LaVine. We saw that this Bulls team wasn't even privy to like trading Alex Caruso for 2 first-round picks a season ago. So
Yes.
we know that the asking price for Zach LaVine is going to be pretty steep if this front office has anywhere close to the kind of logic they were going with last year. I pray they don't, but I also don't blame them for having high standards. Um, but yeah, if you have a lineup where you can somehow get away with murder and maybe you get off of Jonathan Kuminga, but you still are able to keep Andrew Wiggins, a starting lineup of Steph with Zach, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, Trace Jackson Davis, and somehow you still keep Pod's Buddy Healed.
Yeah.
Damn. What
Yeah.
else? I mean, what else do you? What I mean, damn.
Exactly.
What else do you say?
Start out of the realm of possibility, man. Let us know what you guys think down below. These three stars. Maybe like if you like want us to let us know where you want to see these guys down below.
Yeah.
Jay, quick topic before we move on to the drafting quiz.
Mhm.
We're going to go over to WNBA real quick, and I just wanted to mention the Dallas Wings have won the NBA draft lottery
Yeah.
for next year's draft. Obviously, the big name prospect coming out of this going into this year's draft is going to be Paige Beckers.
Mhm.
And then now the team with the worst record in the league last year would start Enrique. Can you help me with the last name again? I always ended like
Ogunbowale?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like she finally at the 20 plus point per game score finally might get that next star next to her. Jay, what does this mean for the Dallas Wings?
It means a lot, man. Obviously, this is a team that's coming off a tough season, and this is a team that was just in the postseason a year before and was one of the more scrappy teams that had a real resurgence. So the way last year went, it was really rough for them. Obviously, the injury bug was one of the things that hurt them in early going of the season. They
Yeah,
got my favorite player in the league, Satu Sabali, very late in that year.
yeah,
And it made it hard for them to kind of climb back in by the time things got, kind of frisky. I remember we had a WNBA topic where we were talking about the difference between the Chicago Sky and the Indiana Fever for that 5-6 spot in the postseason. I threw out the name. I was gonna. I mentioned to you off camera. I said the name that I want to say, but the team that I think the likelihood is low. But the name that I want to say could possibly crack that spot is the Dallas Wings if they get Satu Sabali back. And obviously that didn't kind of play out to the way I was hoping for. For those who don't know, the Dallas Wings are my second favorite team behind the Washington Mystics. Washington Mystics are my favorite team just locally, but Dallas is my favorite team, kind of because of the fact that Satu is my favorite player. So if Satu leaves, sorry Dallas, I might end up switching teams up. We'll see how
yes.
that goes. That's just like my favorite player in the league. She's one of the players that got me into watching WNBA past college basketball, women's past college basketball. So there's a little bit of intrigue there, obviously, but the backcourt of Enrique and Page, I mean, offensively, it's going to be one of the more dynamic backcourts in the league. And that sounds so crazy to say coming off of what we just saw with the Indiana Fever just this past season. But they would easily, when you talk about ranking backcourts, they're going to be up there out the gate, just from a talent perspective. If we're talking about putting the ball in the basket, it's going to be a top five backcourt day
Yeah,
one, just from a talent perspective. What the Dallas Wings are able to do around that is going to be really important. But again, having the worst record in the league and getting the number one pick in this draft is special, man, because you're getting a generational talent, or at least that's what we believe. And if you look at the rest of the first round, Dallas is not one of the lucky teams that has more than one first round pick. So they had to knock this one out of the park. As a team that didn't have the greatest season last year. So getting Page, that's like the greatest consolation prize to not having multiple first round picks in a draft class that's actually really, really good. I mean, at some point, maybe we'll finally go down that rabbit hole because there's a lot of women in this class that I'm a big fan of that could come out the gate and look really good next season. But Paige obviously is the you know the name that stands out more than all, and that's great for Dallas. And the marketability of this league, obviously, in a big market like Texas, Page is going to further bring on the spotlight to a league that we saw really like burst on the scene like nothing we've ever really seen before last year with Caitlin. Page is just
yeah.
gonna double down on that.
Hundred
So yeah.
percent. Yeah, no, I'm excited for this Dallas Wings team, man. You get that backcourt, and I think this is like especially important because Natasha Howard is going to be going into free agency. You have also Satu, your girl, finally going into free agency as well. So having potentially losing those two ladies like in free agency was going to be tough, especially because there's some of your better players on your team. So
Yeah.
having someone like Paige Beckers come in kind of alleviates a lot of that pressure. It's like that's why like when you saw like the Wings finally win the lottery, Enrique was over the moon, man. She
Yeah.
was over.
Right.
She's like, thank God we finally like something finally went our way. So shout out to them. Hopefully, maybe like this entices someone like Asati Sabali to come back to the team, just
Mhm.
to kind of like especially now that you're gonna have that like nice young core over there in Dallas and potentially start a big three. So who knows? I think it's a great spot for them. We're gonna definitely go to the draft like closer to the maybe going to next year stuff like that, especially because like when's the draft, like April,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah,
usually like right around the time, like it's usually like right after March Madness is over,
right,
or like
yeah,
it's like right, kind of like they kind of finish up March Madness. The draft is like a week or like 2 weeks later, and then boom, next thing you know,
season.
season is like creeping up at that point.
So yeah, we'll definitely go into the draft. Like we're gonna definitely go into the draft like closer to the day once we like get an idea of like most of these prospects.
Yeah.
Also, we're gonna talk about more about like the the new Golden State team that's coming there too. So that's gonna be we're
Yeah.
gonna start talking about them very shortly. But shout out to the Wings though. He's on a shout out to the Wings. Congratulations on getting the first overall pick and the chance to get Paige Beckers on their team. It's gonna be a very entertaining duo. We'll say for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited. Obviously, last season was a good place for us to start when it comes to the WNBA stuff. I'm hoping that we can build on that this season and get even further into the nuances of the league as they become more mainstream, it looks like.
100%. That's gonna be definitely something to watch out for.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know down below what you guys think, and let us know what some of the prospects that you are excited to see coming out of this WNBA draft class. Moving on to the next topic, we're gonna go with the hit your free throw staples. We're gonna start off with the NBA draft.
Yeah.
And Jay, for today's draft topic, it's something that I kind of saw. I want to shout out the page. I wish I saved the post so I can shout them out here. But I
Mhm.
just saw as going through TikTok, drafting players who have played for 5 or more teams. So the journeyman of the league.
Mhm.
Trying to draft between those players. With current players, though, we're not going all time. But of course, with the hidden free throws, you're gonna have to hear a twist. And for this one, we are gonna try and draft current players, but the version we're gonna get is their prime versions. So it's gonna be a very interesting draft. Jay, how do you feel about this one?
I'm a little nervous because I feel like there's gonna be names that I end up missing. Um, But I still think I think that little caveat makes things a little bit more interesting because the prime version does kind of open things up a little bit. So I'm looking forward to that.
100%. And you know how these drafts go. Jay gets the first pick. I get the next two, and we run things serpentine style. So Jay, you get the first overall pick. Who are you gonna choose for the drafting players who have played the NBA Journeyman draft? We'll say that.
Yeah, man. So one of the guys who like just barely cracks the rotation for this one, I believe either just barely cracks the rotation or like kind of just fits the mold. Prime version, man. Give me Russ. Give me
Yeah,
Russ.
I was gonna say he is one of the top guys on this team that I was gonna think of getting. So getting Russ there is a really good pick for you. Do like that pick. All right, for my next two picks, these two guys just make it as well. I'm glad that I'm able to have this backcourt with me. Let's reunite Houston, man. Let's go, Chris Paul. Let's go, James Harden.
Yeah, I kind of saw it coming.
Yeah.
James Harden's actually a guy who like I believe just barely makes this
Yes.
list. He's on his fifth team, I
Yeah,
guess.
he's on his 15 right now on the Clippers.
Yeah, he's one of those that like just barely goes over the list. So that I saw that I figured that one was down the pipeline. By the way, back-to-back drafts of me getting Russell Westbrook. By the way,
Yeah.
should throw that out there.
Yeah,
I
and
didn't notice
also
that until I was looking at my list from last week or from last time.
yeah, 100%. And also, I mean, James Harden paired with a prime Chris Paul, not like a Chris Paul near the end, closer to
Yeah,
the end of his career, would be a
yeah.
damn good duo.
Right. Hey
Yeah,
man, we saw it for what it was, and it was a damn good duo. So I'm pretty sure the prime version only kind of
elevates
further
that, yeah, for sure.
further pushes that envelope. Um, man, let me think. Let me think. Who's another dude? Let's start very basic. Let me get somebody who kind of just like fits a typical mold of how I tend to draft. Let me get KCP.
ACP. Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good pick.
Yeah, let me go ahead and take KCP. He's always kind of like he's kind of like a staple archetype for the way I tend to draft over here. I always end up getting like a defensive oriented guy who ends up shooting the three pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And then, man, after that is so tricky though. Somebody that I think makes the list. I have to see if they do, and it's gonna be hilarious if they actually do count. Let me see if this man counts. One, two, three. Dang it, he's four. Okay, so I can't go with him.
Who was that guy were you thinking of?
It was a friend of the show, Julius Randle. That was
Yeah, I was thinking
yeah.
of him too, but then I realized, yeah, it's just 4 teams.
Yeah, he just barely actually misses that list. Um, let me I'm gonna end up regretting this one probably. Wait a minute, actually, let me see him. Well, no, that's too small. Let me go with Tobias. I know Tobias clears. I know Tobias Harris
Yeah,
clears.
he was on my short list.
Yeah.
As much as people want to hate on the man with the huge contract, He was one of the guys I was thinking of on this list. That's a solid pickup because like once you start getting like away from like the top guys, it's gonna get some slim pickings over here.
Yeah.
All right, let's go with the next one. Huh? Should I? I'm gonna start working my front court, and for my center position, let me go. I'm gonna go more for fit here than like maybe more ability. Let me go with Isaiah Hartenstein.
Okay.
It's
I
weird.
like that one.
Isaiah Hartenstein, I mean, like this man, like remember early on in his career, this guy was just like trying to find a team to where he like sticks. It didn't take till he found his place with the Clippers, where he finally like starts sticking to teams. But he's been on 5 teams, so Isaiah Hartenstein's gonna be there. And then, bro, I might run a stretch 4 here. Give me, it's between these two guys, but give me Prime Gallinari, Danilo
Damn, if you
Gallinari.
know, you know, bro. If you know, you know.
Yeah,
That's a solid pick. And it's funny. It's interesting to determine who you actually even believe is prime Gallinari. I would say probably Denver.
I was gonna say Denver.
I would say
That was my
Denver,
thing. Yeah, I was
but
thinking
New
Denver.
York wasn't bad either, though. New York wasn't bad either.
You know, he was a good one, but I do remember him for those days on the Nuggets, and I'm gonna have him on this team. I think it's a damn good roster so far. So, Jay, I'm gonna throw it back to you.
That's a good one, man. Danilo's a good one. Oh man. Mm, 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 mm. See, the key word here is prime. But the prime doesn't have to be long. That's a
Doesn't
good
have to be
thing.
just the best version of that player.
You know what, man? If I can get a prime version of this guy, if I get a prime version of this guy, it's a pretty damn good center. Let me get Christian Wood, man.
Christian Wood.
Let me get
Okay.
man.
I mean, he was a 2010 guy that 1 year with the Rockets. No.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that resurgence year with the Rockets, it was short lived, but if we get the prime, it's the prime. And that 2010 season, he was in most improved player of the year convos for
Discussions.
like
Yeah.
I think the good part of what the first four, maybe 4.5 months of the season. So, you know,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. All right, Jay. I'm gonna show a bit of my bias here
Okay.
because I could go with someone that would fit this roster perfectly. Oh, wait, do you have a second pick? Actually, did you do both picks already? Right, you did.
Oh, actually, no. You're right.
Wait,
I only
so
picked
wait,
the center.
there's a man. There's a man I think trapped in Brooklyn right now that could potentially fit.
Would you call him trapped? That's what you said. He said he's trapped.
Yeah, but
That's
he's
funny.
kind of trapped there.
That's funny. Um, dude, this is actually way harder than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, there's like it's a limited pool, but it's like solid players.
You know what? You know what? You're just right. You're just right here. The answer is Buddy Hield. Honestly, I
Buddy
think that's
Hield,
just
yeah,
what I'm gonna do, and I think KCP is just gonna have to play three for me. Because like you said, the wing position is actually just very dry. We'll name some of the guys that were in there after we're done the draft, but like the wing position is actually like low key very dry. Even if we're talking prime level, like it's not as littered as you would hope.
yeah. That's a good one though, Buddy Hield. I was like, that would be a great fit for your team. So that's a good one there. For my final pick, though, I'm gonna tell you right now, Jay. I was thinking Dante DiVincenzo.
That
I
would have
was
been a
thinking,
great pick, though.
yeah, I was thinking Dante
Yeah.
DiVincenzo. I was thinking Bojan Bogdanovic,
Okay, that's a good one too.
but I'm gonna stick with Raptor Nation. I'm gonna have a small lineup. I don't care. Give me Kyle Lowry
Fair.
to
I can't
round
argue
up
with
the.
that.
Give me Kyle Lowry.
Yeah.
He'll do all the dirty work. He'll still hit the three. If you give me prime Kyle Lowry, he'll find his way somewhere on this team. So give me Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, man. For your team, he can play small forward, dude.
Honestly,
Prime
well,
Kyle Lowry can play small forward for your team. Shoot.
honestly, I'm not even gonna disagree with that. Three
Yeah.
technical point guards on this team. I don't
Yeah.
care. Gonna get Kyle Lowry on this team to round out my lineup. Man, But Jada, who are some other guys that you were thinking of? I know you were mentioning some guys.
Man, it was bugging the crap out of me, but like Jeff Green was one that obviously like kind of
Of
came to
course.
mind. Um, a few other dudes who were like kind of interesting was like obviously like prime DeAndre Jordan is like actual like
DeAndre Jordan was one
an,
of those guys, yeah.
an
Drummond?
absolute unit. Drummond is
Drummond,
another
yeah.
one that's like another really like solid pickup. There were like a few that like are pretty that are like pretty good in terms of like fitting the bill. I think let me go back to my list real quick that I had pulled up because I was looking at something recently. Where are you? Where are you?
What are you looking at?
I was trying to look for. I was trying because I was looking at a bunch of different lists for like players that have played like like on at least
Yeah.
like a couple of different teams, and I think that might actually be
Yeah,
it, low
there's
key.
it's not like it's not a deep list, but there's some good players on
Yeah,
it.
there's a
Yeah.
good handful of names, maybe. Yeah, Jeff might actually be the best name left when I
Yeah.
really think about it. He might be the best name left, honestly,
Yeah.
at the
But
wing spot, especially.
especially the wings ball, yeah, which is tough. But yeah, some good rosters. We're gonna go through them now. Jay, who do you have on your journeyman? Who do you have on your roster for the journeyman draft?
Maybe not one of my better drafts, but given the stipulations, I think I'm actually kind of happy with how this went. So I had Russell Westbrook at the 1, I had
Yeah.
Buddy Hield at the 2, Contavious Caldwell Pope at the 3, Tobias Harris at the 4, and then Christian Wood at the 5. I just realized I have 3 players that played for the Pistons sometime in their life. Wow, crazy.
Yo, that team's gonna score. That team's gonna score.
That might be all we do, TV. That might be all we do. I don't know.
100%. But yeah, for my roster here though, I got CP3 running the 1, James Harden at the 2, screw it up putting Kyle Lowry at the 3, Danilo Gallinari at the 4, and Isaiah Hardenstein at the 5. Solid lineups all around. Solid lineups all
Yeah,
around. Let us know what
no,
you guys think down below. Whose team is better, my team or Jay's team? Let us know your thoughts down below. Or if there's any guys that you're missing that we were missing, let us know as well. Jay, time for the final segment of the show. And it is time for the NBA quiz. And for today's quiz, Jay,
huh?
it's kind of, I would say kind of recent because just 2 weeks ago, James Harden moved into number 2 all time in terms of 3-pointers made,
Oh
surpassing Reggie
yeah.
Miller.
Mhm.
So you had Steph Curry number 1, James Harden number 2. Funnily enough, both guys from the same draft class, 2009 draft class, which is pretty crazy. But for today's quiz, Jay, let's remove people from 2009 on from this history. I'm gonna
Okay.
need you to name me the top 10 players in shooting all time, 3-pointers made before the year 2009. So 2009 and
Like
before.
drafted before 2009 or
Nope,
like
they played. So like whoever has the most threes between the years 1980 to 2009.
wow. Dang, you got in your bag with this one.
There's some
Whew.
very recognizable names for sure. There's a lot of great shooters on this list. Let's see if you can knock it out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, okay. Um so obviously like Reggie Miller is still here.
Reggie Miller would be number 1 at this time. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Let's think knockdown shooters. Pre 2009 is a good hit too.
Yeah.
What about random name Rashard Lewis?
Rashard Lewis is not in the top 25. Oh, number 12 he's actually. That's tough.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
He's
say
tough.
not the top 25. That is insane.
No, 12, 12. He's
Okay,
12.
okay, okay. Who are other players that I'm thinking of? Who else do I think
Hey,
of?
as long as they played like a majority, like if they played like a majority of the time before the year 2009, usually like in their shooters, they're probably like in a good spot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is the longevity is gonna matter here too. What about Vince? Vince Carter?
Vince Carter is not on this list. I
Yeah,
don't think like
it kind of makes sense, but
yeah.
I figured I'd throw it out there.
Yeah,
You know what I
no.
mean?
I think he's top 10 right now. I know that he's like in the top 10, like as of
Got you,
like right now.
got you.
Yeah,
Okay. Pre 2009.
you're missing like the other really obvious one.
Stojakovic?
Well, he wasn't the guy I was talking about, but he's number 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, well
yeah,
that works out. That works out.
yeah.
Um wow, I feel like it's not the name you're thinking of, but I was gonna say Dirk.
Dirk Nowitzki is not in the top 25 at this time. Wow.
Wow. Okay. Notable. Notable. Um when the heck was JJ Redick drafted?
He was drafted, I think, like in 2005, so I don't think he's had enough threes at this point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good. Yeah, good point. Because it has to be
Yeah,
from.
yeah.
Yeah, good point. Kobe?
Kobe Bryant also is not on this list.
Really?
Yeah,
That's at least half of his career right there.
yeah. But again, like this is a time where like 3-pointers weren't
Interesting.
really encouraged, so you have to
Good
be like
point.
a
Good
yeah.
point. Good point. Good point.
So there's like yeah,
Um.
so you have to be like an elite 3-point shooter to even be like allowed to get these shots off.
Yeah. Um.
I mean, you said Rashard Lewis. Like if you think about like those prime Sonics days, you're missing the guy.
Prime Sonics days. Oh wow, does Ray Allen still count?
Ray Allen is number 2 on this list.
Oh wow, dang! I didn't
Yeah.
even think about that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great. Dang it. Yeah, because of course. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Dang. 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 Okay. Cool. Um.
So you got 1, 2, and
Oh,
4 so far.
I'm trying to think of people that will be like high up on this list in general. What about Jason Terry?
Jason Terry is number 14.
Okay, so my brain is in the right place, but I
Right
might need to
eras, yeah.
I need to move the goalpost just a little bit. Okay, what about
Think
this
of
one's
like
gonna
yeah.
silly, but I think it might work. What about Jason Richardson?
Jason Richardson does not fall in the top 25.
Okay, all right, okay. So okay, come back to earth a little bit. Come back to earth a little bit.
I think that most of these guys are like 90s, 2000s guys.
So what about like Kenny Smith?
Kenny Smith, not on this list.
Okay.
Think
It's
like
gonna be
a
trickier
lot
than
of
I
these guys here
thought.
are have been all stars. I would say, yeah, a lot of these guys have been all stars.
Okay, that's a good hint. That's a good hint. That's a good hint. Um, are all these names I would know? Is there gonna be somebody that like there's like hell no, there's no way in the world. Is there like anybody that's like super miscellaneous that's like there's no way in the world I'm gonna get them?
No,
Because I guess
these are
obscure
these are all
sometimes.
names you know. These are all names you should know.
Okay, cool. What
Yeah.
about like Mike Bibby?
Mike Bibby, did he make this list? No, he did not. Not even top
Dang it.
25. There's a number 3 is a guy who I think spent most of his time with the Nuggets. I mean, this is the hardest one. Number 3 is I think the hardest name, but he's still like pretty known. Like he was like a knockdown shooter in the 90s. Like that was like what he was known for.
Dang, that's not Glenn Rice. That's not Glenn Rice.
Well, he's number 5 though.
He's
So
on the list.
yeah,
We like
he's
we
number
like that.
5.
We like to hear that. We like to hear that.
Yeah, Glenn Rice
It's
is
not
number 5.
Andre Miller, obviously. Wrong time frame.
He's definitely on those like the Dikembe Mutombo teams. But yeah, this guy was like a shooter. This guy was like considered like one of the best shooters of his like probably like best shooter of his era, like next to Reggie Miller.
On the Nuggets?
What other teams does this man play for? I mean, like I don't want to fixate you on number 3 so much, but this is
No,
like
it's
the
okay. No,
formula
that's fine though. That's fine though.
Yeah, played from 84
Um,
to 2000. But yeah, this guy was like
84 to 2000. Huh. I don't know. Um, Random, but what about like Gilbert?
Gilbert. No, he's not on this list.
Okay, figured. Very short prime. Very short
Yeah, short
prime. So
prime.
like, makes sense
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
but
Um,
think longevity. There's still some of like, um, some like point guards here that like maybe were known for shooting threes, but they shot enough threes like in their career
okay. What about
in terms of 2000s point guards.
Okay, I'm gonna give you two Lakers guys. Maybe they both come up, maybe they don't. What about Byron Scott,
No Byron Scott.
Derek Fisher?
Derek Fisher. I don't think Derek Fisher shot threes like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
it was eh.
yeah, yeah.
It was like a
There,
depends type of
there's a
deal.
couple of guys here that actually played for the Lakers, number 6 and number 8, but it was like more like 90s, early 2000s. Actually, more like late 90s.
Okay. So the Nuggets guy I was thinking was Latrell.
Not Latrell Sprewell.
Sprewell? Okay.
No.
So it's not so that's not okay. Got you. My boy Kukoc, stretch five?
Nope. A lot of think like again like all-star names. All of these, I think the guys left are like mostly guards, except for maybe one who's like a guard forward.
Okay, so what about like Gary Payton?
Gary Payton, no.
Wow, what the heck?
One of these guys is probably like a top 10 PG of all time.
What,
It's weird.
John Stockton?
Not John Stockton, but this guy,
Oh,
NBA champion
okay.
with the Mavericks.
Oh yeah, Jason Kidd. Yeah, he's like on every list. God, I'll be forgetting
Number
that.
9 on number 9 on this list is Jason Kidd.
Yeah, Jason Kidd be on every list for real. He'd be on
Yeah.
every list for real. Trying to think of more like guards.
One guy I think just recently got inducted to the Hall of Fame. Like, was it
Hmm.
this year? I think it was this year, yeah.
Oh, that probably wasn't the name I was thinking. I was gonna say Paul Pierce.
Not Paul Pierce.
Okay. Um.
Besides that, we also have another guy who maybe you won't do. He wasn't known for 3-point shooting, but he was known for like being one of the best like handles in the league.
Best handles in. Okay, wow. Best handles. Jamal Crawford
Not Jamal Crawford earlier.
earlier. Because you're not talking about AI.
Not
Can't be.
AI. Honestly, even a little bit earlier than that. Like a little bit earlier.
Nick Van Exel?
Nick Van Exel was one of the guys, not the guy I was talking about, but he's
Oh,
up there at
okay.
number
I mean,
8.
okay. Shout out to Nick though, bro. Put
Shout
some
out to Nick
respect on
Van
my man.
Exel, number 8.
Put some
That's one of
respect
the
on my
Laker
man.
guys I was talking about.
Um, this is also probably is not related to who you're talking about. What about like Dennis Scott for that, like their Orlando Magic team?
Dennis Scott is, I think, just off the top 25. I didn't even mention this,
Ah,
but like Paul Pierce is number 18. Yeah.
okay. We're shooting up. We're shooting up. Um, Mitch Richmond, maybe?
Number 19. You're like around. You're like around.
I know. I feel like I'm like shooting. I feel like I'm shooting in the right spot, but
Let's see.
it's
Let's
not
see.
where I need it to be.
Again. Let's see. Number 7 played for the Warriors, Heat. Um. Again, known for he had a nice crossover. Also has a son in the league.
Oh, this is Tim Hardaway.
Tim Hardaway's at number
Yeah.
7.
Wow,
Yep.
handles it good on UTV. Good respect. Good respect. Good respect. Some people don't put respect on Tim Hardaway's handles the way you just did. I'm glad
Yeah.
you did that. I almost didn't think about him because I felt like people don't talk about him as like a top 10 handles guy the way they should. But Tim
Yeah.
Hardaway is definitely up there.
Yeah.
What about like deadlift shrimp or something like that? What about like him?
He's not up here. I don't think he's not top 25 here. But number 10 was an NBA champion, former Finals MVP too on a
Finals MVP. What?
he's a Finals MVP, yeah.
That is actually crazy to me.
Inducted to the Hall of Fame this year.
I actually don't remember the list for Hall of Fame this year, which is bad on me.
Yeah,
But
I think he was headlined next to Vince Carter. It was him and Vince Carter headlining this year.
I don't have that one at the minute. But what about Drazen?
Drazen, not on the list. I think he only put like 3 or 4 years in the league.
Wow, this is insane.
Yeah. So you're missing number 6 again. If you think of that Nick Van Exel Lakers, he's like on the same team. He also played for the Hornets and the Heat.
The Hornets and the Heat. Damn. Okay, so I was gonna say Chauncey Billups, but it's not
That's number
that.
10. That's
Oh,
number 10.
sweet. Oh,
Okay. Number
we're
10.
cooking with grease. We're cooking with grease now, buddy.
Number 10 is
Okay.
Chauncey Billups.
Love to see that. Love to see that. Okay. Let me get deeper in the bag.
So you're missing number 3 and number 6 left, I think. Yeah, that's it. So number 6 is a former Laker, drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, I think. Yeah, Charlotte Hornets.
Okay.
Low-key athletic dude, but this guy could shoot threes.
Low-key athletic, but could shoot threes. Drafted by the Hornets is tricky because I thought Hershey Hawkins.
I'm trying to double.
But I
don't
don't
he was drafted by the
Lakers.
Lakers. He was drafted by the Lakers. My bad.
Oh, he was drafted by the Lakers. Ended up on Charlotte.
Yeah, and that was his next team.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Other way. Got it.
So he was a 2-time All-Star with the Lakers, 1 time with the Charlotte Hornets in the year 2000.
What about the other guy?
The other guy, honestly, like there's like, I can't say much of him just because I didn't really like watch him play. But this guy was just known as like he was like a 1-time All NBA player, 1-time All-Star, 1 Most Improved in 1987. Crazy, I didn't know that. Played for Dallas, Seattle, and Denver, San Antonio. He was a kind of a bit of a journeyman himself, but I would say his best years were Seattle and Denver. His initials are DE. It's a bit of a harder one.
Dale Ellis?
Dale Ellis, yeah, number 3.
What the heck? I remember him as a shooter, but like not. I see why he's like one of those that you can't really like describe. I see why you said that's one of those you couldn't really describe.
And then number 6.
He was a shooter though.
That was his thing. Like that was like
that was like his whole thing. But like
And then the number 6 played with part of that like the Hornets team, I think, with like Jamal Mashburn and all that. Lakers.
Is this just Del Curry and I'm just sleeping?
Del Curry's number 25, unfortunately. But
wow. All right.
This guy, EJ is his initials.
Okay, not Ernie Johnson. We know that.
Not Ernie Johnson. Had a long.
He's more of an elevator Ernie, by the way. So
average 15 points a game in his career. Shot the 3-ball decently well. Number 6 all time. Very like basic last name. Like think of like your favorite role player point guard. You always mention him on the pod.
So it's something Jones.
Yes.
It's something Jones.
EJ.
And I just have to figure out. It's something Jones. Who?
It begins with the letter E.
Begins with the letter E. Okay. Jones. I'm trying to think of like 3-point shooters that I would say.
Yeah, played 13 years in the NBA. Ended his career with the Dallas Mavericks in 2008. I do remember this actually.
It's nasty. Like the only name I can come up with is it Eddie Jones?
Yes, it is Eddie Jones.
That's hilarious.
It's Eddie Jones.
Yo, that was such a basic guess.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Eddie Jones.
Yo.
Yeah, top 10 players with the most 3-pointers before the year 2009.
That's so funny.
Crazy list.
Heck?
Can you
read that list? Can you read that top 10 out like 1 to 10 for me real quick? That's hilarious.
No problem. Number 1, Reggie Miller. Number 2, Ray Allen. 3, Dale Ellis. 4, Peja. At number 5, Glenn Rice. 6, Eddie Jones. 7, Tim Hardaway. 8, Nick Van Exel. 9, Jason Kidd. 10, Chauncey.
It's crazy that list like sounds right, but then when you think of some of the guys that weren't on the list, you're just like, what? Like Drazen, that one really got me. I'm not gonna lie. That's like Drazen Pekovic really got me. What's another one that like really caught me off guard?
Honestly, I'm surprised that Del Curry wasn't higher.
Del Curry being 25 definitely got me too.
It sucks that Drazen only played like 4 years in the league.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, his is more of a longevity problem.
Yeah. But yeah,
No, there were a couple of names that I was surprised by, but that list sounds right, hilariously enough.
Yeah, no, it is. Some crazy names up here too. Like Cliff Robinson is at number 24. I didn't know he shot that many threes. Terry Porter, Allen Houston up here, Antoine Walker, the man that we like. That one episode of the pod.
It's a lot of love over here on this pod.
And then number 11, the guy who's just 10 threes off, is Michael Finley.
I'm glad he wasn't in the top 10. I was never getting him, bro. I was never getting Michael Finley.
Shout out to Michael Finley. Friggin' one of Dirk's freaking like number 2 guys there in the Mavericks early days. But yeah, let us know down below what you guys think of this quiz. Other quizzes you want to see, let us know down in the comment section below. There's gonna be a lot more quizzes coming in the future, especially during the season. But Jay, it's the end of the episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Look, man, we're going into December. If you guys remember, December 15th is when a lot of the guys that got signed over this offseason become trade eligible. So if you like this episode, when we throw out a bunch of things in relation to a couple of players that we think are going to headline the trade market, give us some feedback, because I think we're going to end up discussing the trade market a lot more frequently towards the back half of December and the early portion of January as we make that push towards both the All-Star break, of course, but also the NBA trade deadline in February. So trade conversations are going to come up a lot more. And I'd love to start having more nuanced conversations with TV, not only just about where we think guys should land, but maybe coming on the podcast with a couple of trade packages kind of pre-packaged, and get you guys' opinions as well on maybe some of the deals in a like who says no type of deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that might be a cool episode to keep in mind, TV, like a couple of trade packages with like that we find on the internet and stuff like that, and kind of hit them with the who says no in the trade exchange, because we know after December 15th, trade talk conversations are gonna skyrocket and gonna be some of the most searched stuff on Google, man, is figuring out who their team is gonna be trying to trade for after a lot more guys become eligible in the market.
100%. It's gonna be a great next couple of months. Obviously, there's gonna be the NBA Cup coming up soon as well. It's a good time to be an NBA basketball fan, and there's a lot of changes potentially coming to the All-Star game. We're going to talk about that in the future as well. There's a lot to talk about in the NBA, and we're just getting started this season, so it's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Remember to check out, again, our individual pages down below. All of the links to the Hit Your Faces podcast on all of social media platforms. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.